Good morning, fellow comic readers. Hope you're having
What is up?
Hope you're having a fine morning. We are the House of Nerds show. I'm your host for today, Steve. To my right, we've got Lauren.
You gotta.
To my below, we've got Sergio there.
What's going on?
We have a fantastic 5th episode for you. Lauren, tell the good people what we have going on.
Yes. So I'm personally super excited because I'm such a fan of his work and all that. I'm definitely a new fan, so I'm not gonna be like I'm here from the start, but I'm a new fan jumping on. He's so great. He's writing a gazillion things right now, and he's probably writing a gazillion more we don't know about. He's writing Catwoman. The main does LAILA STARR. He did his story in the DC's Festival of Heroes today. He does the new Swamp Thing run, which is absolutely phenomenal, and so many other things. Justice League Dark, he is still doing. He's doing amazing work. We're so thrilled to have him as our first guest on the show. As Steve said to me earlier, Ram V on our 5th episode is just kind of great. So Ram V is here.
Ram V on our 5th episode couldn't have worked out better. I mean, when we tell you guys we're like excited, we're geeking. We're all nerds geeking out here.
We're all trying to keep our cool. Let's put that.
Yeah, trying to keep our cool, definitely.
So let's not have the man keep waiting. Ram V, come on down.
Hey, thanks for having me. I think we've definitely confused people enough to go, this is Ram 5.
Well, I noticed that a couple days ago. I'm like V for V. Like we've got Ram V on the 5th episode. We should have just did that for a hashtag. We should do that for branding.
We dropped the ball on that, but we're super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us on the House of Nerd show.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Where exactly are you greeting us from?
I'm based out of London. Originally from India, but now I live in London. I've lived here for a little over 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with that being said, I'm sorry to put you on the spot so quickly, but I do want to talk about this one book specifically because I think it is very, I would say, London focused, or there's at least a lot of collaborators that are from London with regards to it. It was a book that came out a few years ago called 24 Panels.
Mm-hmm.
So this was kind of a collaboration, a story built upon by, a lot of different artists for a fire that took place on Grenfell Tower.
Yeah.
And you have so many different artists and writers involved in this book. For those that don't know, it's an anthology story. There's a bunch of short stories in it. Each one only allowed to be 24 panels. So that being said, you ended up writing a short story called Silhouette Titans.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to hear your process on that, especially how were you involved in this? How were you approached to do this? And then what was it like trying to craft a story that was only 24 panels long?
Well, I'll answer the last bit first. 24 panels, 6 panels a page, 4 pages. I've done 4-page short stories before, so that's not too bad. That works out fine. As far as how I got involved, there's a London meetup that happens at a local pub. At least that used to happen at a local pub before the world went crazy. But I was at that pub. It was called the Royal George, and the editor for this 24 Panels anthology was also there, and I believe they knew Kieran Gillen, who I'd met at the through these London meetups, and so Kieran, I think, had recommended myself and Dan Waters for the anthology. We were relatively new still. We were just starting out in the industry at that point, it struck me as the kind of initiative that I should be part of. I remember when the Grenfell fire happened. I was watching it on TV. Not particularly sort of real for me, but I remember Dan calling me up and going like, it's literally across from where I live and the sky is just black and it's daytime, the sky is black. So it was quite staggering in its visual and in its impact on people. And obviously so many people lost their lives. And it has become part of the sort of London safety and class conversation ever since. So yeah, I felt like it was an important thing to be part of. Yeah.
So with that being said, with how like the importance involved in crafting this kind of book, the short story that you did for it, how did you come up with that idea?
Well, I mean, it's hard to think all the way back. I've come up with so many ideas since then that
Yeah.
I frankly, I mean, if I'm totally honest, I only barely remember coming up with it right now.
There were a bunch of skyscrapers involved, but it felt like an apocalyptic world where people have overgrown those.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to do a story that was in some way at least hopeful. And I felt like, you know, somewhere I'd heard, I grew up with a bunch of architects when I was studying in the States, and so we had these discussions of like skyscrapers are incredibly inefficient once you go over 30 floors. They're just like energy sinks. They're terrible for the planet, and yet we insist on building them as like these statements of power, if you will. And invariably they came up, at least originally, as a way of sort of high intensity, concentrated, low cost housing. And so essentially they were meant for people to be kind of crammed into these spaces. And what that says about the people who built them and the kind of societies that propagate them, I think all of that is in conversation with why the Grenfell fire happened. And how at least British society looks at council housing and people who are immigrants, who are poor, who are, you know, living in difficult conditions. And so I felt like I wanted to say something about that while still kind of having a lens of you know, genre fiction and science fiction, if you will.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I love the short story in it, but also I kind of like the differences in the stories that are involved in this book. I don't know if you ever ended up actually reading everyone else.
Yeah, I did read a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So to those that haven't read it yet, definitely check out 24 Panels. It's created for a good cause. And there's one book in specific into this where it's a choose your own adventure type story using the 24 panels, which I thought was just brilliant in using panels just for that kind of thing. That being said, Alan Moore was also part of this book, but you have another thing in common with him, and that's Swamp Thing, right? Lauren, I know you have a few questions from fans and yourself involving Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so Swamp Thing had been struggling for a while in terms of he had his big runs in the past, right? His whole legacy was created, particularly by Alan Moore, as you know, you mentioned, Steve. But then it kind of dipped a bit, and then you kind of, I mean, you helped bring back how popularity for Swamp Thing, because I mean, your Justice League Dark line, in particular, before it got thrown to 10 pages and back in Justice League now, I mean, it's the best team book I've read in a long time, you know, and even in 10 pages, it continues to still be absolutely phenomenal, even though we are all wanting more. So in terms of, you know, continuing Swamp Thing's legacy and stuff, I mean, you know, what drew you to wanting to continue his legacy, not just as, you know, a team member in Justice League Dark, but and as his own character, you know, his own legacy?
Sure. I think part of the reason people found sort of my take on Swamp Thing and Justice League Dark to be sort of engaging, if you will, is because I think that connects to the reason why people feel like I'm carrying forward this legacy, if you will, which kind of, but I'm also doing kind of my own thing with it. But I think when it comes to writing superhero characters or characters that have had a long history and legacy, I think it's very important to understand why a character works. Mm-hmm. And once you get that, you can do anything you want with that character, as long as you have a fundamental understanding of why that character is interesting. You can tell any kind of story with it, and it'll still be good. If you don't get that, and Swamp Thing is not one of your straightforward, you know, I'm gonna leap out of a jungle and punch you kind of
right.
And it has to be intellectual. It has to be creepy. It has to be weirdly existential in some way. And so I think because I understood that, probably I had some measure of success with telling stories with him. And that this was happening around the same time as DC were trying to sort of look for their 5G initiative, which didn't turn out to be. But they asked me to come forward with a few proposals for whatever characters I wanted to tackle, and I just went, give me a Swamp Thing solo book, and there were all kinds of fears, like, oh well, he hasn't done well in a really long time. And I told him the same thing. I think it's because you have to understand why that character works, and I don't think a lot of the ones in between did. And so, when we launched this, and when we did the Future State stuff before that, and we there was a anthology Halloween special Swamp Thing as well. I think by the time I'd done all of those, DC editorial were also beginning to understand that, okay, this is a interesting take. This is not your standard superhero stuff. So I think that led to kind of me taking on the series, and the response to it has been phenomenal so far. Obviously, there are Swamp Thing fans. I think the greatest sort of pleasure for me is when there are people who've read Swamp Thing who go like, hey, I kind of dropped off after the original few runs and haven't really gotten back into it, but like your series brought me back. And I feel like
I saw that tweet of yours. Somebody said something similar to that, like, hey, I stopped reading comics, but ever since I read this line or character you've done this line with, they got back into it. And I saw you be like, yeah, like that's exactly what I want to see. Yeah,
and that gives me a lot of joy, because I think we've been missing that sort of late 80s, early 90s Vertigo vibe ever since kind of Vertigo was shelved. And I don't want to repeat what they did, but I want people to understand why that line was so successful. Because it was trying to do something with comics that was unusual, that was different. It was trying to take these characters that we expect, will come in and save the day, and it was trying to look at them as complex things, as sometimes as real individuals, sometimes as completely bizarre and unreal individuals. And I think that spirit has to be there in comics somewhere. There always has to be a place for that spirit where you take a story and you go like, I'm going to make this completely weird and unusual and different. I think if we stop doing that and we start producing these kind of entertaining 20 pagers each time, we're kind of missing a beat there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like you're such a huge advocate for like everything you just said in terms of, pushing the envelope, but not just like, we're going to push boundaries, just push boundaries. You're like, no, we're not just pushing boundaries, but we're doing things that are different, that, have this weirdness and creepiness. And when you mentioned the whole balancing, intellect with creepiness and all that, which you do incredibly well, especially in this new Swamp Thing line, that's one thing that I think about, is that you have such a natural talent for being able to mix science with magic and realism, like put all those things together somehow, because not many writers can do that. A lot of people are great at like, fantastical stories. A lot of people are good at like realistic stories. A lot of people, are good at just like writing really intellectual stories. You put all those things together with all the different backgrounds you have in your life. Like I've read up on how, your engineering background, all those things. And I think I absolutely agree with you. I mean, all those things hit for me. It's so cool to see a book that is just written to be that way. And the fact, it's even cooler just to hear that, you asked for Swamp Thing behind the scenes, and you advocated for, hey, here's the reason why it's worth trying out, because it's going to pay off. And like you just said, it sounds like, numbers wise and, critics wise, it's doing well.
The numbers were very encouraging. I think the office at DC was pleasantly surprised by the numbers, and the numbers kind of continue to stay strong. It's looking likely that we will talk about and get a season 2, which is great news. And so, like, all I would say is, keep it going. I mean, I know people love the book and people discuss it, but editorial offices don't get to see that. Editorial offices get to see
Yeah.
a sales report.
The
So,
money.
so go out and
Yeah.
pick up books.
Yeah, I mean, why do
So-
you think I try to buy as many covers as I can? Like, even if I'm like, you know what, I like this cover better, I'm still gonna buy them all because one, they're still great, and two, yeah, like they see numbers. So you're saying that if we keep pushing it like we have in terms of buying it and all that, that we can possibly. Now, when you say season 2, are you thinking more like another limited run or possibly like an actual ongoing?
Well, I like the format. I pitched it in the seasonal format. So a lot of people come up to me and go like, "Oh man, they gave you just a 10 issue series." I'm like, "No, I pitched this as 10 issue seasons." Part of the reason we wanted to do that is, I think creatively, Swamp Thing is such an interesting property. Like I wanted, here are 10 issues. This will give you an idea of what the season is like, and you have those expectations. You've read that, but just in terms of format, I want to make the next 10 issues completely different thematically, and have it go. Oh, I did not think you could do this with Swamp Thing, but here's a weird Swamp Thing in space take, or here's a weird Swamp Thing becomes part of urban redevelopment take. Like there's so many interesting things you can do with a character and you can do with that power set. So we wanted to do this as 10 issue seasons. It also gave us an opportunity as a creative team to go like, okay, how does everyone feel about another 10 issue commitment? And so I think that's good. I also feel like it gives jumping on points for readers. Like if someone picks up issue 9, they know that they've only got 8 issues to pick up before then. If someone picks up issue 6 of season 2, they know that, okay, I can either go back and buy everything from season 1, or I can just buy the first 4 issues of season 2 and I'll still be fine. I think part of that sort of old ongoing format is like, if something is on issue 30, like it's very intimidating for a new reader to go and pick up issue 30, And I don't want that to be the case. I want people to be like, I've never read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run in the chronological order. Like first time I picked it up, picked up like volume 2, issue 4. I read that. I went back and found issues, but at no point did I ever feel like, oh, I'm totally lost. I don't know what's going on in the story. And I feel like preserving that about comics is kind of important.
Yeah, well, it's really cool to hear about you talk about in seasons, like a TV show, because so often with comics, we're all like, well, we want ongoing and there's arcs built in, but even something simple as what you talk about with numbering kind of matters, because even if it's like, oh, brand new arc starting at issue 11, people go, but I still want to read those 11 issues beforehand,
Right.
So that's really awesome, and I like that viewpoint on comics and the fact that you're. That doesn't hinder you from wanting to continue writing more. Like you're not like wanting an ongoing in order to keep telling more stories. You're like, no, if I get 10 more issues, that I can do that. That's what I want.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's good for me as a writer to go like, okay, here we are at the end of another 10 issues. Do I have more stories to tell? Do I have 10 issues worth of stories to tell? Then okay, I'll do it. If I don't, then maybe it's time to go. Okay, this is it. And it was a sweet, cool 10 issue, 20 issue, 30 issue thing, Yeah,
I find myself realizing that not every character and not every story needs an ongoing, needs to always continue. Sometimes you need an end. Sometimes you just need to give a breather for a character and like let them rest for a bit and take them out of that box when, you've got a story to tell or something that's limited. Even the DC Black Label books, I find myself enjoying a lot of those, sometimes more than any of the ongoing stuff, because it feels complete. I can get into it and finish it and put it down and then go, that was enjoyable. Like that had an end. Yeah. Like sometimes an ongoing to me can be detrimental to some of the characters and some of the stories.
Sure. I mean, I think they're all formats, and I think you have to write to the formats. Like if I went and I said, Swamp Thing was going to be an ongoing, and it was going to go on for XYZ number of issues, the way I would structure that would be very different from the way I structure these sort of 10 issue seasons. Like by the time we get to issue 10 of season 1, I think you will see that there's a shape to all of it. That our character started issue 1 in a certain place and ended issue 10 in a different place. And you will see that oh, that's a story. I can see it. Even though there are, 2 or 3 issue individual stories happening, you'll see a bigger picture arc through all of it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things I love about, your run of Swamp Thing with, as I like to call them, both the mics on the pencils and the colors.
I like
and
to
all
call
that.
them spicy and perky.
That's perfect. I mean, I really love that the fact that you still have a lot of the, the horror and the creepy vibes, like you said, right, of a lot, like kind of honoring Alan Moore's and previous runs of Swamp Thing, but they use such bright colors in these books for Swamp Thing. I mean, it's beautiful, it's bright, it's but it's still creepy and horrifying. I mean,
someone described it as neon horror, and I think
Ooh,
that's
I love that. I love
Techno
that.
horror.
yeah, it's unbelievable how it works. They could contrast each other, but they work in this case. Is that something that when you all start working on the book together, that you guys discussed that you want things like that, you want the neon horror vibe, you want those contrasting things to be able to work together?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of take pride in that. When I approach a comic, I don't approach it just as here's the scripts, now go do whatever magic you guys do.
Yeah.
I dabble a little bit of art myself, and I've taken the time to educate myself with artistic choices, color palettes, and all of those things. So when we started this book, Mike Perkins, Mike Spicer, and I got on a phone call, and we sat down and we went, okay, what do we want this book to look like? And we kind of shot ideas back and forth. And one of the things that I mentioned that I think Mike Perkins especially remembers each time when the colors come in, is I said, this should feel like a Winding Refn movie. Like if you think about Drive, or you think about Only God Forgives or Neon Demon, it has that same sort of vibe of creepiness, but just completely drowned in saturated color. And so I think that's certainly a vibe that we knew we were going to go for.
Yeah, and it definitely shows, and it's really cool just to see how. I mean, it makes sense that the woods and the green is bright, when you think about it. But like just seeing a desert somehow have that much color to it, like those scenes are really cool. But it's still the shadowing they do, and I mean I know those are more things that come on their work, but like the shadowing they do really just complements all the other the
I mean if you
writing.
think about it. In film, certainly, like just because a location is desolate or a location is monotone doesn't make it uninteresting. Like you remember that scene in Blade Runner 2049 where he ends up in the desert and there's these steps. Yeah. It's such a beautiful, such a colorful palette that they have yellows and oranges and reds everywhere. And I feel like that's how you should think about visual art anyway, because we're not telling stories set to photographs. We don't have to have the sky be blue and then the desert be whatever, stone colored, I suppose. These are choices. These are narrative choices we make. The desert can be red if we want it to. The desert can be blue if we want it to be. And so I think that's an artistic choice, and I think it vibes really well with the tone of the book.
Yeah, so in terms of choices, our live chat's kind of bumping, and Dragon Ranger wants to know, if you could write any character for any company, who would you like to write and why? I'm sure this is a question you have to answer a lot, but
yeah, I never answer it because I go like, I don't think in terms of characters. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh man, if I ever got a Batman story, this is what I would write.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of stories. Like I go, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this in comics? And then I go, yeah, I think this story would fit this character, or this story would fit this character. And so, like recently, I was asked to pitch on a couple of Black Label books, and give me a list of characters. And these are not characters that I had stories for in my head, but these are characters for whom I had takes. Like. I'd give you examples, but I'd be revealing my pitches.
That's okay. We don't have any issues.
Just make up a name and go with it.
That was the Nerd Show exclusive.
No, but the idea is that, again, just like so take Swamp Thing for example. My take was going to be we're gonna do neon horror, modern day horror, but we're going to do it in context to 2021. So so it's not gonna be Alec Holland who's been around since 19 whatever. It's gonna be some guy who's dealing with today's problems. It's gonna be climate focused, but dealing with today's problems. We're not going to bring Nuke Face back because nuclear energy is not as scary as it used to be. So I think having a take for me is more interesting than having favorite characters. That said, I certainly have takes that I think would work for characters. Some of these are already being pitched, so I won't talk about them. But Doctor Strange is a personal favorite, certainly. And as a kid, I grew up reading the old Lee Falk Phantom stories. So one day,
yeah, I feel like you're always going to tackle something, that is mystical. But I mean, also Doctor Strange, again, he's a character that you could easily do a combination of like what you do best, which is magic and realism with science. Like he seems kind of a perfect fit already. So
that, and even like
also I feel like that kind of story also lends itself really well to doing some formalistically really interesting things with comics, which I don't think have been done in context of Doctor Strange, which is just like, play with the panels, play with the page, play with take comics as metafiction now because it's a Doctor Strange story. You can't get away with doing that with other things, but yeah.
So we need to start a campaign to get you on a Strange book. We need to start yelling at Marvel.
Well, right now I don't have the time to be doing more than I'm doing. I'm sure it will come around. So
one day.
Looking forward to seeing that one. That'll be.
But yeah, I think Doctor Strange would work really well with your style, as Lauren mentioned, because you do specific takes on like horror comics and thrillers that always invoke like this mysticism and the supernatural element. I know one of the books that Sergio wants to talk about, which kind of involves and encompasses all of these elements, is Blue and Green.
Yeah.
Sergio, what are your thoughts on Blue and Green?
Blue and Green is one of my favorite books that I've read. Period. Full transparency, Ram. First book I read of yours was LAILA STARR. I read it. We discussed it here on the show, and we all fell in love with the work, with the writing, and because of that, I checked out very recently Blue and Green, These Savage Shores, among your other works. But Blue and Green, I don't think I've ever been so fully engrossed. It was an experience reading this story. I decided about halfway through. I read the story in one shot. About halfway through, I decided to put on some Miles Davis in the background there, which I guess that's where you got the title of the
of course
the Miles Davis track. And there were certain panels, certain beats where it, in all honesty, it was an experience. It was moving to have this music and the way you wrote the story. In particular, there was a scene where Eric finally got to perform in that club. He was on stage, and I guess everything that he had within him finally came out. And to have the music in the background, and I'm reading this and I'm listening, and it was just I don't know how else to say other than just the most moving experience I've ever had reading a comic. Something that I honestly didn't think could happen in the way that it did. So I just wanted to just kind of congratulate you on such a magnificent piece of work there.
Thank you.
It's funny. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Serge.
That's cool. What is kind of your background musically? Like, what made you kind of decide to write a story like Blue and Green?
Yeah, I'm an amateur musician at best. I have a nice black and gold Gibson Les Paul sitting next to me. You can't see it. But but yeah, I grew up learning a lot of different musical instruments. I play 4 different instruments, I think.
Well,
But none of them with any measure of seriousness. But my dad was an avid music listener. He didn't know how to play anything, but he heard a lot, and he heard really weirdly wide kind of taste in music. You know, there was like Tibetan throat singing right next to Indian classical music, right next to blues, right next to German post techno punk. So yeah, he heard a lot of music, and I think very early on that was inculcated in me, that appreciation for music. And then this book was certainly influenced by my time in Philadelphia, which is really the first time I was in real world touching distance of the kind of music that I had always heard when I was a kid, but I'd never been to the States before then.
right.
And I walked into an old place in Philly called Ortlieb's Jazz House, which I don't think it's open anymore. But it was the kind of place where they did 2 sets, and the second set was when all the regulars came in, and you realized they all knew each other, and they all sat there and listened to music each night. And you know, there's that cliche vibe of jazz, it's like smoky bars and whiskey
Right.
glasses and
Yeah.
like stains on pianos and all that, but it was real suddenly, and it did to me the same thing, hopefully, that the story did to you, which was it was an experience just sitting there and taking all that in, and I kind of wanted to put that on paper, but I didn't know I wanted to do the story until it was. I remember this very clearly. It was after Seattle Comic Con, ECCC, and I was like, oh man, I spent the whole day inside this convention next to thousands of people. I just want some me time. So I walked out 2 streets down. There was a jazz bar that said live performance. I walked in. There's absolutely nobody in there. Maybe 3 or 4 people, and I was like, perfect. So I went and sat down, ordered some food. I sat at the bar just watching these guys play. And then they took their mid-set break, and the bassist comes up to the bar, and I offered to buy him a drink. And he was like, thank you very much. Sat down. We were chatting for a while. And it turned out to be a really interesting conversation. We started talking about writing and music and how long he'd been doing it. And we arrived at this line that I think was super influential in Blue and Green, where we said jazz and writing are trying to do the same things. Jazz and good writing are trying to do the same things. And that they're trying to take conventional words, words you and I use every day, but they're trying to achieve something that is so unique and so itself that you can't condense it. You can't articulate it outside of that combination, that unusual combination of notes or words. And so to this day, I can't specifically tell you what Blue and Green is. It's not
Right.
like, if someone says, what's Star Wars? You can explain to them in one line what Star Wars is.
Mhm.
Right.
But the most common explanation for Blue and Green, and I listen to other people talk about it, like, you can't explain it. You have to read it, man.
Right.
And I feel like that's important. I feel like that's what I tried to do with that story. And hopefully
I ended up reading it for this weekend as well, just because Sergio mentioned how good it was. And when I was reading it, it just felt like a novel in a way. Like the voice of the character was so integral to the story that I felt like I could hear them speaking to me, like constantly throughout the book. It felt like, when I'm thinking about it, I like the fact that it didn't feel too dialogue heavy, but there was a lot of text to it, right? It was very heavy in just character. And it the beginning part where he's dealing with the funeral of his mom and things like that, it really hit me. And like just the way you worded some of the stuff about like just being in a box and we're there and now not, it just hit me like so hard on like what that meant for the character, what that means for me to like death is a thing that everyone has to deal with in their own ways, and I liked that how heavy it kind of hit me. Like it really felt real to me.
Words are
Yeah.
cool things.
I mean, to Steve's point as well. Yeah, I mean, the way your narration is so good too, because I feel like sometimes in some stories, but depending on what story you're writing and you're trying to tell, the text can be, like Steve said, like dialogue heavy and stuff, but or just narration in terms of like, this is what's happening, blah, blah, blah. But you're so good at capturing like the inner thought processes of humans, which I imagine is incredibly, hard to be able to calculate and do, because I mean, we only know how ourselves think, we'll never be inside each other's head, but you do such a good job of being able to really capture that essence and throw it on the paper with words. And
Yeah, I
Bowling
mean,
Green really does that.
I think that's what writers are supposed to do anyway. I think the idea is, I don't remember who said it, but I think it was J.M. Coetzee, who had been invited to. He's a Nobel Prize winning writer, South African, I think. And he'd been invited to give a lecture at a university about writing and writing well. And he came in and the only thing he said was, good writing is 90% good observation, and just sat down and didn't speak for the rest of his lecture, which was entertaining. But that's a very meaningful and that's a very important thing to remember, that you can't write unless you observe and unless you kind of go outside and experience life and sort of try to articulate what you've experienced.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say that too, because I mean, Steve mentioned earlier with the whole, especially death is addressed, right? That's a big theme in Blue and Green, and you actually have a lot of stories that revolve around some theme of death.
Yeah.
And so,
Sure.
Obviously, the main death of LAILA STARR, I mean, has death in the name, so it's going to involve that. And you have death personified as a woman. I mean, how does this theme continue to translate in so many stories you tell? Because I mean, you just said, writing is 90% observation. So how does the theme of death become something that you want to continue telling in different ways through different stories, different characters?
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes through this at some point in their lives where you contemplate mortality, right? And what it means for you and what it means to you when you're 45 is different from what it means to you when you're 20 is different from what it means to you when you're 10. And, at 10, death is a supernatural construct that is so far away that you don't quite comprehend it as reality. Whereas when you're 45, it's a real thing that people deal with. When you're 65, 70, I'm sure it'll be a very different feeling. And I feel like good stories come from these kind of existential questions about what we think about life, what we think about death, what we think about pain, happiness, sadness, love, all of those things. And it doesn't matter if you're writing, some guy lost trying to make a career out of being a jazz musician, or you're writing a god descended onto earth, or you're writing a man who keeps transforming into a shambling swamp creature at night. Eventually, the things we care about always come down to these things, friendship, love, death, life. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in my phase of contemplating mortality. I'm sure there will come a time where I contemplate other things. So.
For sure. And I mean, we've got a lot of love in the chat. I mean, everybody blew up the second we mentioned LAILA STARR. Everybody's loving it. Issue 2 comes out this Wednesday, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
LAILA STARR. Okay. Yeah. So
that's right. There's I always get a little bit nervous right before the issue is going to come out, because people form their opinions really quickly. Like they'll read issue 1 and they'll go like, this is what the series is about. Like, no, you're gonna be surprised when you pick up issue 2. And then people read issue 2 and I'm sure they're gonna go like, oh, okay, this is what the series is gonna be. I'm like, no, it's not. Issue 3 is completely different. But I feel like people are starting to figure that out. So I've gotten some early reactions on 2. I think someone posted on Twitter where they were just like, I was near tears by the end of this issue. I was like, yes.
Which is completely different than the first one, because that's one thing
Yeah.
I thought about was, like Blue and Green's take on death is, that as a complete story. Obviously, we don't have the complete story of LAILA STARR yet, but Blue and Green, so solemn and all the other things. Whereas the first issue of LAILA STARR, like there's a lot more humor involved in that.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
You know what they say about good humor, right?
No.
Pagliacci.
That's right.
Doctor. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think good humor and infinite sadness both come from the same place.
See, and I mean, I agree, because if something can make me laugh my ass off and then be on the floor crying 5 seconds later, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So while we're talking about LAILA STARR, one thing when I was reading it that brought to my attention was the fact that the deities shown in this book, they're the Hindu deities. And I know in media we've often seen, Greek deities or Roman deities and stuff like that, but not often do we see the Hindu deities. Is there did you specifically know that you wanted to use those versions of for these characters? Was that something that you even thought about?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious question, the first question that came to mind when I said, I'm going to write a comic book about death personified, is everyone goes, oh, you mean Neil Gaiman's death, right?
Mhm.
And to an extent, that is true. Like, it's such an iconic take that it's very hard to get away from it. But if you go a step further and think about it, like, death means very different things depending on what culture you come from.
Absolutely.
There's death and the final judgment and the afterlife if you're from a Christian part of the world. But if you're from India, death is not the end. Like, you get sort of recycled. Like, the most you can hope for is not to come back as a dung beetle. Like, if you're really screwed up, that's the worst that can happen to you, and the best that can happen to you is that you don't come back. And so that's such an interesting and a weird concept to deal with when you contemplate mortality. And so I knew that I wanted to start talking about death in context that was culturally relevant to me and where I come from. And so I think these stories will lean into that idea. And the deities are all part of that. And the fact that they are a corporate pencil pushing, paper shoving culture that's trying to deal with that is all a part about what it's like to live and die in India.
Yeah. I also like the fact that the visual aesthetics of the Hindu deities, it works like for an artist. I find like if I were an artist, I'd love to be able to draw 8 or 10 different arms and 3 different heads for a character. And I feel like it gives so much freedom to kind of give a unique, view on them, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a very interesting cultural aesthetic difference between deities in sort of Norse and Greco-Roman mythologies and deities in Hinduism. Like, the Greco-Roman gods aren't allowed to be silly. Mm-hmm. They have to be kind of imposing, like Zeus, Poseidon carries a trident, big dude. Thor, god of thunder. But if you come to India, like, things get a little bit silly. Like, here's a god, he's got the head of an elephant for some reason. And he met this guy who was trying to write the great Indian epic, and he lost his pen, so he broke off one of his tusks and gave it to him to write with. So it wasn't like the tusk was turned into some great weapon. He was just like, oh man, you don't have a pen, here, have it. And so it's that kind of ability to laugh at yourself and laugh at the gods and think of them as petty and silly and sometimes foolish. I think that really lends itself to the vibe of the story. And I think Philippe, when he's drawing these characters, is very aware of that. That's why they feel funny. Like, the humor works because the characters feel humorous.
Yeah, and you keep going back a lot to talking about you're representing where you're from. You're representing things that a lot of people, especially in America, even where you are in London and stuff, we don't know these other cultures. We're so honed on our own, and so I mean, you do so much in our stories. I mean, Swamp Thing, it sounds like you very specifically wanted to have an Indian man be the host or what have you of the green of Swamp Thing. You made sure that, and your Catwoman one, it sounds like, and tell me otherwise, but it sounds like you wanted to, the new character you created in that also had a story and what came out this week of DC's Festival of Heroes, the Asian Superhero Celebration, you just, even though you're still doing Catwoman, Selena Kyle and all that, you're adding in these other elements of your culture.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what it would feel like in the real world, right? So if you live in a fairly populated, fairly metropolitan city, I bet you can't go through a whole day without meeting someone who's not from the place where you are. Like if I walk out in London right now, I'll see Indian people, people from Europe, people from Spain, people from the Caribbean, people from Africa. All of these countries together form the society that we live in. How can we tell stories that don't reflect that and expect them to feel real then?
Absolutely.
Then you're creating some kind of weird escapist microcosm where you're not really discussing human concerns, where you're just providing pure, unadulterated escapism, which, I mean, I guess you could do that, but if that's the only thing you're consuming, it's like you're drinking coffee, but it has less coffee and more sugar in it. You need some bitterness, you need some water in there, you need some flavors, man.
Yeah. So
now, Ram, speaking of the artists that you worked on, you got Philippe Andrade on LAILA STARR. How do you kind of connect with these artists? Do you pick and choose the artists that you work with? Do you have a style? Because it's something like Blue and Green and these Savage Shores, these are books that now it's almost, I couldn't see them with any other artist. I could not picture Blue and Green with any other art style other than what Anand did in that book, which is just absolutely gorgeous stuff. So how do you kind of come to connect with these artists and choose what you want for maybe a specific title versus something else?
Well, I mean, it doesn't quite go that way in that I don't pick an artist and then choose which artist goes for which story. When I have a story, it forms itself with an aesthetic in my head. Like I recently pitched a book to DC. I'm discussing it with the editors, and they said, "What about this artist?" And I went, I love this artist, and they're really big name, but that's not the style that for this story. And so I think, sorry, someone's at my door. I think it pays to know visually what your story needs to look like. And sometimes you'll develop that with an artist. Like Blue and Green, for example. Anand didn't know he could do that before we decided to do Blue and Green. In that, if you read our earlier work, we did a book called Graffitis Wall, which came out from Dark Horse. And that one has a completely different art style than Blue and Green. And so when Blue and Green came out, people were like, what, is the same artist? How's that possible? But it's possible because when we were working on Graffitis Wall, like Anand and I would sit down in bars and discuss what we wanted to do. And he'd always be sketching. And I'd looked at his sketches, and because they're from life, they're much more realistic than Graffitis Wall. And I went like, we could do a book that is just your sketching style with digital colors. And he disagreed with me. He was like, nah, that's not a style. That's not a thing. And so we sat down for 2.5 months, and he tried to develop something that came from there. And he did like lots of different things. We tried watercolors and gouache and actually painting every page. And then we ended up on a style which was pencil sketches and digital colors. And he was like, yes, this is it, Ram. And I'm never going to let him live this down. He was like, dude, that is literally the first thing I suggested.
I'm glad
it came out beautifully, worked out. I mean, I couldn't see any other art style with that particular book. So the process worked.
Yes. I
You were
think that's
right.
what I think that's what Anand will say. Instead of giving me the credit.
I'm
think
glad you mentioned. Go ahead.
No, Anand would say that he needed to go through that process to get to that place to
Right,
realize that it
right.
would work. And I completely agree with him. But yeah.
But you were still right.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned Gravity's
I'm
Wall.
petty like that about these things.
Right.
I'm glad you mentioned Gravity's Wall, just because I didn't even realize it was the same artist as Blue and Green.
Yeah.
Of the books that I've read of yours recently, just for research, two of those were Blue and Green and Gravity's Wall, and they're very distinctly different from one another in an artistic style and even just the writing and the approach to them. I find Gravity's Wall is what you talked about before, about kind of introducing this culture that you have into the book, informing upon it and letting audiences know where you're from, what it's all about. Could you talk a little bit about Gravity's Wall and how you ended up coming up with the idea of this slice of life book?
Yeah, I mean, Graffitis Wall came to me after I had attended a chat here by an artist called Tom Eaton, who was giving a talk as part of the London Design Festival, and he talked about the roots of street art and how it began as this kind of rebellious movement. It was illegal to tag buildings, and because it was illegal, it was art. The illegality of it was part of that art. And I totally understand what he means by it. So that kind of, while he was doing that talk, my brain started gravitating towards street art in India, which I had seen, but not nearly as prevalent as, say, New York or London, for that matter. But I wanted to talk about street art in context of India and what it means and where it comes from, and show what rebellion and desire and ambition feels like in India. And so I took that lens of street art and I kind of decided to recontextualize it to an Indian setting with Indian characters. And the other thing I wanted to do with that is you're right. I'm trying to show people, like, look, here's where I come from. There's a different culture. But I'm also trying to tell people that, you don't need to have traveled to Mumbai to understand what these characters are going through. And there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in, never having been outside of the US, but appreciating that life can be hard in Mumbai just as life can be hard in North Philly or in New York or in LA, and so I think that is more important to me than just transmitting my culture to people. The importance is to tell people that, look, you and I are not that different, even though we are completely different.
Yeah.
The struggles, the good stuff, it's universal.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, fundamentally,
Yeah.
people care about the same things. People worry about the same things. People are afraid of the same things. In fact, it's when people don't care about the same things, don't worry about the same things, and aren't afraid of the same things, that you really start seeing social differences pop up. So it's not that people from Africa think differently from people from India, think differently from people from the States. No, it's someone who has $60 million is not afraid of the same things that someone who is working weekend to weekend does. And so those are the real differences that we should be looking at, is kind of the point.
And focusing on everything that is, the same. I mean, I feel it's just, as a society, if we focus on all our similarities, and we're all, no matter like where we're from Mumbai or from Toronto,
and
struggles and the desires and needs, we're all the same.
It's a area of some real stark examples. Actually, if you think about it, go all the way past the history and language and migrations. The world used to be a lot closer than it is right now.
Yeah.
There are words in Hindi which the same words are used in Italian. And it's because there have been migrations. It's because there's been a cultural exchange that is so formative to the society we live in now.
That commonality, right?
Absolutely. Well, before you have to get going, I know you probably have a million things on your calendar. I want to give a minute or two at least to have some people in the chat's questions answered.
Sure.
So we have a question for Raw Comics asking, what book are you most proud of? I have
which of your children do you really like?
It's a tough one.
I mean, I think I'm proud of very different things with very different books. I think Blue and Green I'm very proud of because it's so different to everything else. And it was really hard to do the way we did the book, which was this kind of improvisational. Anna would work on a page, then I would write it and send it to him. So I'm really proud of that with Blue and Green. With These Savage Shores, I'm super proud of the fact that it came to me as a full and complete story, and I was able to deliver that as a neat, full and complete story on paper. So I'm very proud of that. Super proud of my Swamp Thing work because it's the first time I'm taking a beloved character and being unafraid with it. In terms of like, okay, I can change things. I can do whatever I want with this. And I feel like I'm very proud of that. I'm generally very proud of being I kind of pride myself on being able to write in any genre that I want to write. So, Catwoman, Swamp Thing, Justice League Dark, all very different books. LAILA STARR, all very different books. And I feel very proud of being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're definitely one of those artists that has done so much, has continued to do so much. I mean, I would argue you're definitely, you're still ramping up. Like you're nowhere near your prime from my point of view. And, you get to write both your indies and, you get to write for the big names, right? You got DC and Marvel. And so I don't know how you'll feel about this question, but we have a question about, do you prefer writing for independent publishers or smaller ones in general versus the big two?
I mean, I think they scratch very different itches for me. Like I wouldn't tell a cool superhero story at Image.
Right.
Like why? I can just tell that at DC. And I see no point in kind of replicating that at a creator-owned publisher. So all of my creator-owned work endeavors to be something that's a little bit more personal, something that is a little bit more experimental. Like if you've read Paradiso, that was certainly something that I was trying. If you read These Savage Shores, again, the format is not something I would get to use in a superhero book today. Unless I was Tom King. But,
I'd be remiss to ask Ram, any plans to return to the world of These Savage Shores, or is that a self-contained story and it's been?
I get asked this question a lot, and I feel like writing any more with that story would take away from the philosophical point of that story. The point is everything changed, and we can never go back to it. So that's literal. Like. We can never go back to it.
We have one more question at least from Twitter at Stephen Hay. Now he asked, if you could fan cast it, which actors and actresses would you play the character? Would you choose to play the characters in the Justice League Dark series or movie? I feel like that's a hot question considering that HBO Max shows up in the air and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I know people love doing this, but. I think the one fan casting decision that I agree with, because it came before the character existed, is Sting should play Constantine.
I missed that. What was that?
Sting should play. Sting should play John Constantine.
I've never heard that. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
How is he not? It's the look.
Yeah, but also like John Constantine was developed because Alan Moore wanted to put Sting into a comic book.
Oh, really? I was not aware.
Yeah, Alan Moore went like, I literally want to put Sting into something I'm doing. Let's make this John Constantine guy in Swamp Thing look like Sting.
That is interesting. Wow. Okay, you learn something new every day. Yeah.
Can't disagree with that. I just want Matt Ryan to be able to play him forever, though, because Matt
Yeah,
Ryan, that's what he
same.
wants to do, the poor man. He's
Yeah.
just like, just let me play John Constantine. That's it. That's my role.
I cannot
Matt,
see
Matt
that.
Ryan can be the multiverse version of Sting's Constantine.
That we'll take that compromise.
Well, casting choice for Bobo is very difficult. I need to go through an IMDb list of chimps. Yeah, no, I really just don't.
I mean, I feel like the whole thing with Detective Chimp, it's the whole do you use a puppet, do you put a costume, do you do CGI with him? You can't even discuss casting with him.
Yeah, but CGI. I mean, yeah, we could do whatever we want now. I thought Idris Elba playing Jason Blood and Etrigan, both same character playing both, would be freaking amazing too.
Yeah, now that you say it, I would have never thought that as a first choice, but now that you say it, I can definitely see it. It'd be really cool to see him as Etrigan. Like that's what you got me on.
Yeah, and I think kind of having the same person playing both characters would be unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It cracks me up. So in the live chat here, we've got somebody saying, I don't know why, but I'd love to hear Seth Rogen voice Detective Chimp of all choices.
I'd love that too.
Great. Let's do it. I don't disagree with that choice.
Would you, real quick, would you ever, if you were asked to help write for like the Justice League Dark show or something, would you be open to doing that? I know writing for a show is completely different than a comic, but would that be something you'd be open to? Like, yeah, I'd love to help pitch that.
In general, I have written for TV before, and I do continue to write for TV. Some of my own work is being currently adapted that I'm involved with right now. So, yeah. So it's another medium. I just want to write wherever I go. So, I'm sure it will be interesting and present its own choices and challenges. And yeah, as far as the superhero stuff goes, yeah, I feel like I have a take on what works in TV and what doesn't work, and if and when the time comes, we shall see.
Yeah. So that being said, do you have anything you'd like to plug to let people know what you're working on, what you want them to take a look at, maybe what you're reading as well?
As far as what I'm reading, I just finished reading The Good Asian from Pounds Anthology, and amazing book. You should go pick it up. I also just finished reading a couple of days ago. The Nice House on the Lake from James Tynion.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And Alvaro Martinez Bueno, and that's going to be an amazing book when it hits. So pick that up. Made in Korea, Jeremy Holt, coming out from Image as well, is a super interesting, super great book. Pick that up. Noctera. Scott was kind enough to send me the first couple of issues, and I was like, man, I had missed this kind of story, which he did quite frequently earlier on in his career as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. There's a Hulk story coming out from Alex Packnettle, which everyone should pick up if you're interested in intellectual, new, fresh takes on existing characters. Yeah, and then as far as my work, ongoing, I continue working on Swamp Thing, Catwoman, and JLD. So everyone should pick all of those up. I'm even doing the Jedi Mind Wave thing.
And again, you say as long as the numbers keep looking good, that we're hopefully gonna get another Swamp Thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's all good news with all the books so far. Like if we continue and grow the numbers on Swamp Thing, we will get another season. With Justice League Dark, all the backups are being collected in a trade, and they're doing that because there's so much support for the 10-page stories as well. So continue supporting those. And Catwoman scratches people's street level gritty crime itch. So
it's a Leah Kyle. Come on, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, apart from that, I've got one more creator-owned thing coming up. I've got Radio Apocalypse coming up from Vault later in the year.
I think I've read some article about that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to come out earlier. We kind of pushed it back
Okay.
because of COVID, and Anand's working from India, and things are pretty rough in India at the moment. So
Yeah.
understandably, there have been some delays. And yeah, Many Deaths of Layla Starr is slated to be a 5-issue series. So
Mhm.
issue 2 is out next week. Go pick that up, and beware that issue 3 is also going to be a complete left turn.
Oh my goodness. You're gonna pass through the 5 stages of grief and every other emotion, right?
Well, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much for being on, Ram. I don't want to take any more of your time. We really appreciate you coming on our little show, taking the time with us.
And thank you guys for following and supporting and talking about the work. It's very important.
Yeah, I feel like if we're ever lucky enough to have you on again, we could just do a whole episode just on blue and green. Which
by then we're gonna have 10 more things to talk about, Sergio.
Well, I mean,
there's a million more things.
Sergio, if we wanted one book to talk about, I could put Blue and Green for Toronto Comic Book Club. If we
gotta do it.
Discuss it.
We're gonna do it. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ram.
I will give you guys a playlist to play along with that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
So that was Ram V on the 5th episode of the House of Nerd Show. But fellow comic readers, if you thought we were going to end the episode here, you are dead wrong. The episode is still going to continue. Sergio, you've got something you'd like to talk about. There's another book, not Blue and Green related, but a different book that you're also really hyped about.
Steve, you gotta give me a moment to collect myself. I'm still like, my dude.
That was the first creator we had on here, Steve. We're not okay.
Yeah, that was nuts, man. He had a lot of great stuff to say, and I'm kind of like I'm tripping out here a little bit, guys. It's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Everybody in the chat had great questions too. Hope you guys enjoyed that. What was your question, man? I'm blanking here. I'm just like, yeah.
Hold on, I'll put the banner up, Serge.
Yes, there's a book, Home Number 2.
That's what you want to talk about.
Home Number 2.
Child of a book.
Yeah, man. Home Number 2, guys, man. We had the opportunity to check out an advanced copy of Home Number 2, and more of the greats, more of the same great stuff that we got from issue number 1. If you guys have, I believe it comes out on Wednesday, yeah?
Yes.
Home Number 2 comes out on Wednesday, man. If you guys were enjoying issue number 1, definitely check it out. There's a flashback moment in the story that, very touching, kind of hits you in the feels. This is a kind of book, man, that, issue 1, I mentioned before, almost brought me to tears, and issue number 2, some very poignant moments in there. So check it out, guys. If you guys are digging Julio Anto's work, there's no reason you shouldn't be picking this up.
It's really good. I mean, it's one of those things where it's not like I can say, like, compared to the first issue, this one's like, oh my God, it gets better and better in terms of like it ups the stakes. But for a book like this, it doesn't need to up stakes or anything. It just needs to continue on the stakes it built from the first issue. And it does such a good job of doing that. And I know a lot of people, can be kind of picky at times in terms of like, oh, well, this isn't big enough or complex enough. It's almost too simple. And for me, it's like, this, it's okay. I mean, and the thing is, it isn't too simple in this case because the issues this tackles, I mean, it's tackling such huge issues that are so real today, and come from all different perspectives and all that. And it's telling it from basically the 1 or 2 points of view of the main characters, and so it may seem simple, but it isn't. And it's very well done. It's one of those things where I don't necessarily read it and go, wow, this is the most mind-blowing thing I've read, but I'm mind-blown because it does such a good job at telling the story it needs to tell.
Now, Steve, I know you were saying, one of the things that kind of threw you off about the book was like the kind of superhero element, right?
Yeah, it was the fusion of the two. Yeah.
So, like, in all honesty, bro, like it's not heavy. Issue number 2, I think it barely touches on the kind of superhero element, or at least there's no like kind of displays of like really powers and kind of.
I mean, there's there's that one moment in the woods. You know what I'm talking about, Serge. I don't want to go
Mhm,
and spoil
mhm.
anything, but again, yeah, I like what they do in terms of the superpowers. They don't focus on, wow, look, he's all of a sudden a superhero or anything, but they focus on how these powers are reflecting the situation, how they reflect his emotions, because I think that's the most powerful thing about the story and the art. Like, to be honest, the art of this, this line isn't my personal favorite style of art, but it's the purpose of the art style, in my opinion, at least, is to show human emotions in the face. I mean, that's one thing I talked about in my original first review for the first issue was, holy shit, you can see every emotion, not only the protagonist's face, the mom and the kid's face and how sad they are and all that, but you can see the emotions in different guards. The ice guards, some are like, they actually don't like what they're doing, but for a reason they feel obligated to do it. You have the guards that are actually, evil and enjoying the shit they're doing, like they don't give a shit. And so I think that's why, even if it's not your favorite thing, that's totally okay. But it's still important to recognize that this is still an important story and that it's still worth at least reading, even just once, because it has an impact, and it's necessary.
Yeah. So Sergio, you would say to fellow comic readers, Home Number 2 is something that they should be checking out and picking up this Wednesday.
Absolutely, man.
Yep.
They should be checking it out. And a little news that's, I guess you could say, is somewhat related. Are we gonna drop him?
I think we
need to drop it right now. Yeah,
we're gonna do it. All right. Well, listen, guys, man. We just got through with our first creator interview.
Yeah,
and
it was amazing. We loved it. We loved it so much.
Amazing.
We got something else lined up for you guys, man. If you guys are digging home, next Sunday, we're gonna have Julio Anta on the show, live, baby, again. We've been championing this book since since they announced it, man. So super duper excited to bring him on, and we're gonna be talking about obviously Home and some of his other works that he's got in the planning stages. So if you guys enjoyed what we're doing, man, feel free to hang out with us and wake up with us and nerd out and get into some important subject matters, man, because this is, again, it's a story that you don't necessarily get in comics, but it's bringing light and attention to real world situations that needs to be discussed. So more fun on the way for you guys, man. Excited about this one. Next
Sunday. So to prepare for next Sunday, please tweet at House of Nerd Show with any questions you'd like to ask Julio Anta, either it's home related or any of his other works. And give it a little hashtag. I don't know. Ask Julio Anta. And tweet
we're gonna have fun with it. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, House of Nerd Show. If you were excited with our discussion with Ram V, I'm sure you'll come to love what we end up talking about with Julio next week.
Yep.
So that's pretty big news for us. That's episode 6.
Yeah, we got man. And then listen, man, I'm not gonna drop no names, but I do want to tease the following Sunday. We've got another creator coming on.
That's going to be a big name, y'all. So if you're like, Ram was a big name, Julio, he's great, but not as large a name. He's going to get there, Julio. Let me tell you, he's great. But yeah, we got another big name coming up.
2 weeks time, we got something cooking, man. Which is like, you guys are going to be excited about this one. Stay tuned. We're gonna drop that information very, very soon with you guys. What is coming up? What's next, guys? So this week we're not really doing like a whole weekend review how we normally do.
We're skipping that.
We'll still put some top picks up on the Twitter though of what we like this week and stuff, because we still want to talk about it with you guys, but we just don't want to hold you 3 hours on a Sunday
for sure.
But I think Steve, you wanted to mention what you talked about on TL Comic Club still, because we know that's super important. And then we still wanted to make sure we did Cobber Drop for you guys, because that's Sergio's favorite segment. It's one of all of our favorite segments, and we want to see how that went. So thank you for the pitch, Lauren. TL Comic Club, we discussed yesterday the Empty Man. It's very closely related to the movie that is adapted from the book, written by Cullen Bunn. It's a lot like Cullen Bunn's other books.
in the sense that it's very like horror and psychological, and it deals with a lot of weird, dark themes. This is not a book for everybody. Some of the themes that are shown in it are very gruesome and just violent. So if you don't like gore, if you don't like some mature themes, Empty Man may not be for you, but it's one that we'll probably keep checking out because I think there's 2 other trades and then the story's complete. As for Teal Comic Book Club discussions, next week, next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be discussing Coffin Bound Volume 1 by Dan Waters. And if you want to join in on the discussion, you can find us on Twitter at TO Comic Book Club. There you will find the Discord link. Come join the Discord if you want to talk comics and if you want to discuss Coffin Bound next week.
Steve, did you watch the film Empty Man?
I didn't know.
No? Okay. I was gonna ask you how it compared to the book because I've seen the film and it was
Yeah, Steve, I know last week when you mentioned you were talking about this week, you mentioned that from what you've heard, the movie and the book weren't that closely similar related.
Yeah, so there are certain themes. I think part of it is because the book didn't really finish, it left open-ended because there's still 2 other trades. The movie is actually more compact. It has an ending, and I think that was
complete.
Yeah. But I think some of the themes and some of the stuff was very similar from what I've heard from some of the people who've read the book and watched the movie. Some of the stuff is very similar to the book, which is always nice for an adaptation. Oh, Alex. Yeah. Alex saying she saw it and she read the book. Apparently
let me know what the big difference is, man, in the chats. Curious. You know what? You got to hit me up next time. You got to send me that reminder text. I wanted to jump in and I wanted to.
Steve got to remind both of us. We both slack on that.
Yeah.
I guess.
Me in particular, though.
I just started sliding in those DMs. Hey, Sergio.
No, just call him. You got his number. He said don't use it.
Anytime, man. 2, 3 a.m., man. My lines are open, man. So, okay, cool.
But next week, Coffin Bound Volume 1 at TO Comic Book Club. Please join the Discord if you like this show, if you like talking to all of us. I know I'm in the chats, Sergio's in the chats. Lauren, you got to
I'm a ghost. I'm a ghost. I'm ghosting. Just what happened?
Moving on, though, we've got our final segment, Sergio's favorite, Cop or Drop.
And Steve, who won the pick last week?
I don't know. I can't remember. It's hazy. It was 7 days ago. I can't remember. Who was it?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
So last week, Steve's pitch was garbage. No, I'm kidding. It actually wasn't. But I know everything. And we picked Time Before Time, which I'm very excited to hear y'all's thoughts on it because, like I said when I pitched it, I think it's pretty damn cool. It's easily one of the first sci-fi, because I don't read a lot of sci-fi, actually, like strict sci-fi. It's the first sci-fi comic that's strictly that I've read in a while that truly just was this is something that is new. I mean, it's not completely new in the concept, but the things that are done in it are new, and it's fantastic for me.
It was cool. I mean, for me, I mean, I'll tell you straight up, it was my book of the week. No, I haven't gotten through all my readings for the week, but yeah, easily it's been my favorite so far. It's cool shit, man. Time travel, but it's like a slightly different kind of twist. I can't really think of something that's.
Yeah, you don't want to spoil any of it.
There was one moment in particular in the book that flipped it on its head for me. Like that one moment between the protagonist and that one person.
Spread?
No, so that flipped it for me in terms of the art. That sold the art for me, was those transition. I absolutely love that because again, this is one of those things where I'm like, oh my god, I love this art style. But this art style and like this page you're showing here, it's absolutely perfect for the environment and the atmosphere this creates, like the 80s sci-fi feel, but still modern, but there's one moment particularly between the protagonist and this one character and something that happened. And that hit me like a freight train, man. I was just like, holy shit, I would have never thought, because we talk about consequences of time travel, and I didn't even think about something like that. Like that hit me pretty hard.
That was cool.
And for me, that's what defined that for me at that point, that sold me on the book. Because at first I was like, yeah, this is cool, and the art works with this, I like it. That got me like right there. Like I didn't even care about the cliffhanger at the ending, because the cliffhanger at the ending to me didn't stand out as much as that one moment where I was like, this is a different take. This is adding something to what we already know.
It's
it's
so
not
funny
completely new, but
because the cliffhanger to me didn't I guess hit as hard as that moment with the main character's buddy there, right? And what kind of happened with him and the consequences of his kind of time travel adventures. That to me was like I guess the shock me moment in the book, more so than what happened at the end there.
And then the page is showing here, Steve. So you've removed the text, so you can't tell. But the opening of the book,
I love the opening
completely humor, 100%. Like just the kind of humor where you're just like, bro, what the hell? It's a great way to start the book, And I mean, even with Ram, we talked about the importance of humor, even in serious contexts, and they did that perfectly here, starting the book off that way.
I agree. Like I didn't know what I was going into when I was started reading this book, but I love that this is the opening, people, and it feels like an idea of something you've seen before from like Looper, dealing with like time travel and all these consequences. But there's a different take on it where it's like, well, what if you're taking these people that feel like refugees in their time and putting them in different times, whether it's the future or past? They pay for this, and their lives are irrevocably changed forever. And I love this cold open because, like you said, it really gives the style of what this comic's about in terms of just the aesthetics with the artwork and the coloring, and also like the humor in it. Like Lauren says, I like
Sarah, you crack us up every time you're in this live chat. Every time.
I like the fact that there is humor, and there is like a realization of what it would be like to take someone out of their time and put them in a time that's completely new to them. In the case of this page, in the case of this cold open, I love that like the kid doesn't even have this realization of something, and it made me think like, oh, what would happen if you took someone who is like a Gen Z or a Gen Z or whatever, right? What happens if you take someone who's only grown up using technology and like lives off their like smartphone and just needs it to thrive and
that's
can't live without internet, right?
It was so funny too, because the premise of this is that these people, you pay the rich, and the rich have this group called the Syndicate, where the Syndicate can take you back in time to live in the time before the dystopia they're currently in. So they travel back in time to escape their current future, And so, these people, it's interesting. It's like, oh, look, you've escaped your terrible future, but also like, I don't have this one commodity that I actually had in this dystopia. What the hell am I supposed to do? And you're like, you're an ungrateful piece of shit, and it's hilarious.
But also it changes their entire life in what they can do, right? If you grow up only having this one thing and thinking it's always existed, and now you're living at a time where it's not even around for like 10, 15 years, how do you cope with that? I just love that realization of the character and just like the humor of it. And,
it's a good opening scene.
Yeah. And even like the font of it, I love the way it utilizes just, 1987, way it utilizes and tells the reader what era it is and what time it is. It's not like a little dialogue box in the corner like what most books do. It's like right in your face. And
and then the color palette matches the era too, right? You've got like the neon, and you know me, I'm a sucker for every episode I'm talking about pinks and purples, but even something like that, it matched up real nice, with the neon of the late 80s and all that. And then like the different eras, you'll see he uses like a different color palette and everything. And I like the art. I like the fisheye lens. And do you guys notice that it almost has the art? I can't put my finger like a texture to it. Yeah, like a slight grain. That makes which is nice. And this is the same team that wrote Write It in Blood, which came out a couple months ago. It's like a pulp noir, like a neo-Western type story, which is very, very good. If you guys haven't read that one, Write It in Blood is something you should check out. Same team, minus I think Declan Shalvey.
Yeah, I will say the art really reminds me of the indie comic Chew that was came out years and years ago. Just like the blockiness of it all, just how kind of squared and angular the faces and the proportions are. Like all of it just feels very like rectangular focused. Not really rounded, just angular with a lot of like everything, right?
Yeah, I haven't read you. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah,
I can't compare it either, but
like it has that like blocky angular artwork, right?
yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, again, that's not a style I like in general. Like by itself, I'd be like, that's not
Yeah.
something I'd like hang on my wall or anything. But it works for the tone of this. And I mean, a lot of people have compared this, like you said earlier, Steve, to Looper, that movie. And that's one thing I like about this comic is that it feels like a movie, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a comic. You know, like it retains the what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of it. The integrity of being an actual comic book while still feeling like a sci-fi movie. Like I felt like I was watching an 80s sci-fi film, but again, you know, modernized enough that the pacing isn't as slow as actual 80s sci-fi films are, as much as you know, we may all love them. Their pacing is definitely much slower than modern films.
It's got me, speaking of 80s, it's got me wanting to watch the old, was it the Van Damme Time Cop? Or maybe that's 90s, but, you know,
close
got a bit of that. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's,
you can't go wrong with like sci-fi. It's sci-fi time travel. I mean, that's
and
my
it's well
jam.
done. It's not like, you know, it's like, oh, I've read this kind of time travel story before. It's still honoring stuff we know about time travel, but adding to it. So yeah, I liked it. I mean, I would cop it easily.
I was gonna say, it sounds like Lauren, you're a cop. Sergio, you said it was like your pick of the week, right?
That's a cop, baby.
That's a cop. Yeah. I mean, my opinion doesn't matter because you guys already won. But I will say, from that first page that we saw, that purple neon that we talked about, where it's just 1987, like right off the bat, I was hooked. Like right off the bat, I was like, I agree with you, Lauren. The art was, you know, took some getting used to because that's normally not what I go for. But like the use of the colors and the font and everything else, and just like the concept of the book, taking refugees from their time and putting them somewhere else. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But what did it for me, like I saw that first page and was like, okay, I think we got a really interesting pick here. But what did it was what we're talking about, where it's that full page spread and just a realization of what's happened.
Yeah.
That hooked me. Like that hit me. It's a cop. It's a cop for me. Like this book was great. Lauren, you picked a winner. Good job.
Go. Wait, is this our first, like, no, this isn't our first three.
It's not our first.
First unanimous? It might be our first unanimous.
It might be.
We gotta go back on that because I wonder if it's our first
because
unanimous.
Like, unanimous. The last
because Steve, you had to be the weirdo.
So yeah, Steve, you fucked that one up, bro. Really? Come on, man.
I'm sorry, I have differing opinions.
Okay.
But yeah, this might be. We'll have to have people check the records. This could
we're
be
gonna
our
go
first
back.
unanimous cop.
And I'm just, I just gotta throw that up, guys. When I tell you Time Cop, check it out, man. You know, it's some good stuff. But yeah, Time Before Time, cop, baby, unanimous.
Yeah,
it might be our first unanimous.
Pick it up. I honestly have seen a lot of people talking about it. I haven't heard one review so far that's been like, yeah, but I didn't care for it. Like, I haven't heard a Steve review. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
I've heard everybody saying it was pretty good, even if it wasn't their favorite. They really liked it.
It was dope. I think with time travel, it can get.
Wasn't LAILA STARR unanimous?
You're probably right, Chris. That was.
Yes,
I think that was. Yeah.
I know. I said yes to that.
Okay, Steve, or excuse me, Chris has got a prize on the way for.
Right, I was gonna say send him more goodies.
We gotta send him more House of Nerd swag, man.
He's our number one fan. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But no, I just wanted before we moved on. You know how it's good. Also, another thing, time travel stuff has been like overdone. You know.
Yeah.
So if it's not something like with a fresh new twist, or it's something for me, anyways, can get bored with very easily.
Yeah.
Because it's been done so often. This not at all. Kind of just from that first page is something that I was into, man. So yeah, you guys go out and cop it, man. Support the good books, for sure.
Loved it. Great read. But I mean, this isn't the end of Copper Drop because we're on to the second section of this. Sergio, Lauren,
get to bother you.
I got to pick something. Well, I know before the show started, Lauren said you might have a winner, so I'm gonna give it to Sergio. Sergio, What do you got for me?
Am I kicking it off?
You're kicking it
Okay.
off. What's
listen,
I'll
next
get
week
it up for you. You introduce it, Serge. I'll get it up.
You guys know I don't read much Big Two these days. I don't read any Marvel. So
Right.
I said, here's my chance. Here's the opportunity to check out some Marvel. Okay, I'm trying to join the
Marvel,
club.
don't stress down.
All right. So the Immortal Hulk, Time of Monsters #1. Yeah. So it's a one shot.
Okay.
So easily digestible. I'm thinking. Now I'm not familiar with, like, I haven't read like the main title, which is.
You haven't read any of Immortal Hulk?
You're missing
man,
out,
I haven't.
big time.
Well, Steve, I've said this. I have not read Marvel since like the
Right.
Death of Wolverine back in
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't know how long ago. But I figure since it's a one shot, it might be easy to take in, to digest. I don't know much of the story wise of what's happening. I think it's the first before Bruce Banner Hulk. It's like, I guess, prehistoric, Hulk, the original
I'm
Hulk.
really
like,
mad because I actually do want to read this and I could sell it for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I'm really
Well, it's like
I'm not gonna give it to you, but I'm
Yeah, but-
damn.
The one thing I can say to kind of, our guest today, Ram V, I think before he got out of here, one of the books he says you guys better go check out because of Alex Pagnadel and Al Ewing, right? So I mean, my dude, if Ram V is saying, check this out, and I'm saying, check it out, I don't know how much more pitching, than that than you need. So
You always go the easy way out, Serge. I just can't.
that's it, man. That's it. I'm keeping it simple, man. Don't gotta complicate it. It looks cool. Let's read some Marvel, baby.
I mean, that's a pretty good sell for you to actually step into a Marvel book that, like you said, you haven't read any Marvel books in however many years.
And Hulk
Lauren,
is cool, man. So
Lauren, that's a hard sell. What do you have?
I know. The only thing I got that can kind of compete with it is I know how much
We're gonna read a Marvel book regardless. This is awesome.
I know how much you love Chip Zdarsky's Spider-Man life story, and I don't blame you because it's phenomenal. I read it after you told me about it, and so this isn't Chip Zdarsky. That's the one downer, but is the same concept as Spider-Man life story in terms of they're going to take the Fantastic Four as and a what if AU thing and age them through the decades, and see all that. And again, I absolutely personally love the Zdarsky, first starting it off with the Spider-Man life story thing. It would just be really freaking cool to see it with the Fantastic Four. Because, I'm one of those people that, I hear, the Fantastic Four, I mean, you can't beat that name. And in terms of Marvel history and all that, you can't really at this point. But, they aren't always the most talked about. They're not always the it thing to talk about. But, like, this could be a great kind of like, Sergio said, it's a good entry point to, Marvel and all that with the one shot. This could be a great intro into just, taking Marvel history that, you should know and putting a twist on it, and jumping in and getting to know the Fantastic Four more. Cause I know how much I respect them as a team and their basic history, but I have actually really sunk myself into anything Fantastic Four. And this would be a great place to do it.
Yeah. I mean, they are Marvel's first family. Like there is, like you said, there's a lot of
and it's not the current continuity, which apparently Fantastic Four fans currently hate the current Fantastic Four line. I don't know all about it, but I know they hate it. So
yeah, I believe it's Dan Slott. He's currently writing I could be wrong, but I think Dan Slott's writing Fantastic Four, and he's the one who did 10 years on Amazing Spider-Man, and now Nick Spencer's writing that. Oh my God! Regardless of what I pick, we're reading a Marvel book.
That just sunk in. Regardless of what happens here, guys, I'm reading my first Marvel book in like 8-9 years.
It's not going to be an X-Men one. That's the one thing I don't like about this. We're not getting started with an X-Men book. You could have picked Way of X.
Yeah. So I mean, it's either way. I'm having my.
I don't know what to choose. Chat, help me out here. Like Fantastic Four life story issue 1, so it's set in the 60s. Versus Immortal Hulk, but it's like a one shot.
He's telling me to read Immortal Hulk regardless, right?
Yeah.
I guess he's talking about the main book. right?
It's a one shot. Yeah, it's the one you picked is talking about the first ever Hulk. That's why it's in prehistoric times. Like it's not just any Hulk before Banner. It's the first ever Hulk.
Oh,
Which is
that's
the
why it's
original,
significant.
where it all started.
That feels like a retcon because I always kind of feel like Banner's supposed to be the first Hulk.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who had the accident happen. He's the one who.
Yeah, but also if you read current, if you've been reading their Moral Hulk line, they're retconning some stuff and creating a whole new universe with their Moral Hulk line. Kind of. I mean, that's what I got when I was reading it, and I mean, it's working though. Like I've never been a Hulk fan before. Like he's the Hulk, he's whatever. But when I started reading that Moral Hulk line, I was like, damn,
you know what?
You got me. I get it.
Steve, as more incentive to you, if we read Immortal Hulk and I dig it, which it looks like it's cool, that's gonna open up the world of Marvel to me. I'll go and pick up like the main
Fantastic Four can do the same thing. I think we need to learn about Marvel's first family.
And then,
you need to see where Marvel came from.
I'm just saying that might lead to me picking up like X-Men or Spidey, and then we can like
you
hang
got
out
Marvel's first family.
and chat more, Steve, about like
Chris is on my side. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're right.
So it's film noir.
Damn, Chris, you're gonna do me like that, eh? Wow. Okay.
So here's the thing. Here's what I'm thinking. As much of a one shot as this Immortal Hulk is, I feel like you would need the Immortal Hulk context in a way. I feel like it's a one shot in the manner where you should really kind of know what's going on with Al Ewing. For that, I think I might choose Fantastic Four because you don't need to know anything. It's a life story.
2 in a row.
It's issue 1. It starts off. It's a blank slate. Sergio, you don't need to know anything. You just pick up the book. I'm going with Fantastic Four. Cool. Fantastic Four, right. Life story number 1. But I don't care. I'm happy. We're reading Marvel.
Yeah. I was gonna say like I'm looking forward to reading some Marvel, man. So.
But definitely pick up Immortal Hulk, Serge, because I've been reading and we read it for club. It's real good, man. You'd like it.
Yeah. I think when it comes to Marvel, like Immortal Hulk and Daredevil are like the two that if I'm gonna pick up a Marvel book, like those are the ones I keep hearing like nothing but great things about. So but I will say this. Listen, if Fantastic Four life story, if this is a flop, Lauren, you're gonna have to be held like you're turning me off to Marvel forever.
No,
that's it. That's gonna be on you.
I think this is going to be good because it's a Fantastic Four life story. It's not the current continuity. It's not. It's not in canon. It's an AU. I think it's going to be good. So.
I hope so. Let's see. I'm looking.
And either way, Steve's happy as a clam, so I've no regrets.
Yeah, look at that. You can't wipe the smile off Steve's face. Dude,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, you're so giddy. Come on.
I think I'm maybe more excited than the talk we had with Ram V. The fact that I'm getting you to read a Marvel book.
I was just about to say that, my man. Okay.
So we sold Marvel. There you go, Marvel. We like you. So don't shut us down. So we're copping Fantastic Four life story next week. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four life story number 1. I think that kind of brings us to the end. Brings us to the end of episode 5 of the House of Nerd Show. Lauren, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm mostly on Twitter at friendlymBHD because I have to abbreviate it by. I'm also on Instagram, but don't even worry about that. Come bother me. Sometimes I tweet too much. Sometimes I never tweet. Just depends on the day.
It depends on what's airing too, because I always have to kind of turn you off because you keep spoiling Supergirl for me. So
I have to live tweet too, and you can't.
I don't watch
it
until the next day.
Well,
I watch it the next day.
I told you to mute me. Just keep muting me. That's fine. I take no offense, but I'm gonna tweet them.
Okay, before we get out of here, just to touch on Supergirl, Lauren, please, what's going on?
My shirt?
Did I see there's a new yeah, you can show that
it is a Supergirl shirt I'm wearing today, but go ahead.
What did I see about
Tom King's
Supergirl? Oh, okay. Tom King's running. Yeah.
Don't get me started.
Right?
That's coming out this week.
I don't know if that's this week or not.
I don't know if it's this week. I feel like if it's this week, Lauren would have picked it.
Oh. But he is running.
I'm not sure if I would have picked it.
Okay.
I have very mixed. I'm a huge fan of Supergirl. I have very mixed feelings about Tom King.
Right.
I'm not sure I trust him with this story, and I also personally the artist that's doing it, they released a couple page preview of the issue. The art style is beautiful. I don't think it works for her from what I've seen in that preview. I don't like that art style for a Supergirl comic. That's how I'm feeling so far.
Well, that's why I brought
I'm
it
very
up.
cautious about this series. I'm very nervous because I want it to do well and I want it to be good because hopefully then we'll get more Supergirl stories and DC might actually start respecting her as a character. But if it gets screwed up or Tom King does stuff that people really hate, regardless if they're a fan of Supergirl already or not, doesn't matter. If he does stuff people don't like and it doesn't do well numbers wise and all that, then it could flop.
Such an interesting choice, though. Such an interesting choice.
Yeah,
for me,
but Tom King, he has a name recognition. So on the one hand, I'm like, well, they chose somebody who has name recognition, so maybe they kind of give a shit. But also, it's Tom King, who's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
But also, Tom King doesn't write a story unless he has an actual idea for it, right? It's not like they're just saying, "Hey, go write Supergirl." Like it's a book where he's like, "I have an idea," which I'm all for creators having ideas for like what we talked about with Ram V.
Right.
Like no one would have thought that he'd be writing Swamp Thing, right? But he had this idea, and you got to give some trust. Like I don't know. I think
I see. Again, I'm with you on the general concept, but in the case of Supergirl, I don't. To be fair, this is my personal take. By the way, I'm not saying I'm right. My personal take is the only person I would trust to write her in the way she needs to be run right now to make her respected as a character, not even perfect plot or story wise. I would trust Tom Taylor because Tom Taylor, as a writer so far, his best thing, he's great in many ways. His best thing is writing characters, is making us fall in love with characters again, i.e. what he's doing for Dick Grayson right now in Nightwing, i.e. what he did for Laura when he did all new Wolverine. I mean, he really builds characters and who they are. And so not saying he has to write Supergirl, nobody else can do it, but that's why I'm so nervous because Tom King, for me, he's never been a writer where even if you like whatever he's done or whatever, and there's a couple of things I've liked by him, they're actually very controversial. He's not completely character driven when he writes in that way. And that's why it makes me nervous. So I hope it's good. I want people to still pick it up because I want, like Ram said, I want the numbers to show that, hey, tell the editorial peeps at DC, give us more Supergirl. But
I feel like that when that does come out, like that's something that we're going to have to
we'll have
check
to talk
out here. Yeah, for sure.
So internet people in the chats, if you have any Supergirl conversations you want to have with Lauren, find her on Twitter at
I'll be crying. It's fine.
at friendly NBHD by Sergio. Where can the good people find you on the web?
Yeah, man. You guys can find me on Twitter at insert name INC. That's insert name Inc. On Instagram at insert name comics. You guys know, man. Any variants, exclusives, back issues, modern, new releases, whatever your comics needs, I got you, man.
He's the Tony Stark of selling comics.
That's it. I got your bad idea, anything, whatever you guys got, man. Hit me up in the DMs, hit me up via email. I'm more than happy to help you guys connect with good books. Good reading.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at StovePost, but more importantly, find TO Comic Book Club at TO Comic Book Club. Find the Discord link there and join the conversation on Discord. We always like to have people join the discussions.
Listen. Just thank you everybody who came out, man. That was like way cool. That was really cool. You guys are always awesome. It's Sunday morning. I know a lot of people. I wanted to sleep in usually for this show, so
we took out Sergio's one day of sleeping in.
Yeah, this was like my one day. So thank you guys for showing up. Every week and make it that much more fun for us, man.
Yeah, this was a fun episode, but the fun doesn't stop because, like we announced, Hulu Anta will be on next
week. That's gonna be cool, man. That's gonna be cool. So. Come hang out with us again, guys, and thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Have a good day. Have a good week. We'll see you later.
Peace.